Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Deuteronomy. Today we start looking at Deuteronomy chapter 15. Now, just by way of quick review, you recall that we are now in a section of Deuteronomy, a rather long section, actually entails chapters 12 through 26. And in this section, Moses is giving a lot of different instructions to the Israelites on once they get into the promised land. This is how you are to live as a people. This is how you are to structure your community. We've already seen in the first few chapters, chapters 12 through 14, he talked to them about establishing a central place of worship where the name of the Lord would dwell. That's where the tabernacle would be set up. He told them to be sure not worship as the Canaanites did, not to go to the high places on which the Canaanites worshiped. And for certain, they were not to worship the gods of the Canaanites. He also talked to them about matters of clean and unclean food, what foods are clean, what foods are unclean. And then he talked to them about the matter of the tithing from their harvest and from their livestock. That's what we've looked at the last few days. Now, we notice at the end of that section on the tithes, every third year the tithes would go toward providing for the Levites as they cared for the tabernacle, but also every third year the tithe would go to providing for the economically needy, the poor among the people. So there's been some thought given. Part of the tithe will go to caring for the needs of those who are in economic necessity or who are poor. Now, as we go into chapter 5, we see some more instructions about providing for those in the land who are poor. Notice in verse 11 of chapter 15 it says, "There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore I command you to be open-handed toward your fellow Israelites who are poor and needy in your land." So Moses makes it clear to the people as he speaks for the Lord that once you establish your community in the promised land, the new nation of Israel, there will always be those among you who fall into economic difficult times and that will be poor. So some things are built into your community life that help them and that provide for them when they are in need, when they are impoverished. Now, the first half of chapter 15 deals with the matter of debt. Notice what it says. Chapter 15, the first few verses. "At the end of every 7 years, you must cancel debts. This is how it's to be done. Every creditor shall cancel any loan they have made to a fellow Israelite. They shall not require payment from anyone among their own people, because the Lord's time for canceling debts has been proclaimed." They have built an interesting thing into their economic system that every 7 years there would be a cancellation of debts. Now, this kind of surprises us at first and we wonder why, but when you consider it, I think we'll understand. When you're poor, you can become overloaded with debt. You need to borrow money to survive, and that debt can become a cycle of oppression where you never find a way to get out of it. So God built into Israelite society a way that you would not be permanently overwhelmed by debt. And so every 7 years there was declared a cancellation period when debt would be wiped off. Now, creditors would understand that, and so in the giving of loans, what you charge back to collect that debt would vary depending on how close you were to the year of freedom. But it's interesting that built into the very system, the economic system of the nation of Israel, was a way where people if economic necessity drove them into debt, that would not become overwhelming to the point they could never be free again. There was a provision built in where that debt would not destroy the rest of your life. Now, we understand how that can happen. We've seen examples in our own community, in our own society, of people who have got into debt and they can never get out of it. And the debt just becomes overwhelming. And debt's a bondage. And if you can't get out of it ever, you're kind of enslaved to the debt. So God built into the Israelite society a provision so that all of your life would not be overwhelmed by debt. There may come periods when you're in economic need and you have to borrow and you may be in debt, but that's not going to be a lifetime procedure. Every 7 years you're going to get a chance at least to start over and to start anew. It's a very interesting provision that God built into Israelite society to care for those who became impoverished by the circumstances of life. Hope you join us tomorrow as we continue our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Deuteronomy.